Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're decoding a raw, street-smart survival manual for the modern world. We're stripping away the polite fiction, just looking at the raw wiring of human nature. Now, this isn't about being evil, it's about waking up. If you've ever felt like you're playing by the rules while everyone else is playing the game, well, you're in exactly the right place. Let's read the writing on the wall.
Okay, let's dive into this. Why do loud and ruthless people win, while kind, hardworking people get left behind? Well, imagine a room with 10 people in it. Statistically speaking, 9 of them are just sleepwalkers. They're reactive, they wait for permission, they're desperate to be liked, terrified of silence, and totally enslaved by their own emotions. They actually think they're making choices, but really, they're just reading a script handed to them by society. But then, there's the 10%, the player. They don't react to chaos, they use it. The ruthless win because while the sleepwalkers complain that the game is unfair, the players are busy learning the rules.
Listen to this unvarnished truth from Niccolò Machiavelli. A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good. His name has kind of become a synonym for evil, but the reality is he was just being historically honest. He wasn't writing about how the world should be. He wrote about how it is. If you rely solely on your goodness to protect you in a world that isn't always good, it's literally like stepping into a lion's cage wearing meat instead of armor. You're going to get devoured.
So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover waking up from the illusion, silence and the art of the mask, strategic use of enemies, time and the power of patience, rational egoism, and finally, emotional alchemy.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, waking up from the illusion and escaping the 90%.
You see, the absolutely deadliest hallucination you can have is expecting the world to be fair. Just look at this massive 90% slice. The sleepwalkers constantly project their own good nature onto everybody else. If they have a kind heart, they just assume everyone else does too. They think fairness is some natural law of the universe, but it's not. Fairness is a human invention. Power is the natural law. By projecting your own morals onto a completely chaotic world, you're leaving yourself entirely vulnerable to greed and betrayal.
And this brilliantly illustrates how to break free. You absolutely have to stop listening to words. Words are cheap, right? They're designed to manipulate, to soothe, to deceive. The 10%, on the other hand, focus on actions. If a company tells you we're a family, but then fires people to save a few bucks, believe the action. It's the raw, naked truth of human nature. When you finally drop the moral expectation of how the world should treat you, you basically become invisible to manipulation. If you recognize the ocean's power to drown you, you don't stand in the water praying to it. No way. You build a boat.
Moving right along to Section 2, silence and the art of the mask, the power of the unseen. We live in an era of just absolute noise, so we really need to use silence as a weapon. And I want you to try this in your very next conversation. When someone finishes a sentence, don't jump in, maintain eye contact, and literally just wait. Did you feel that pause? The human brain naturally interprets silence as a loss of connection. So the sleepwalkers will panic, they'll scramble to fill that vacuum, and in doing so they'll spill their secrets, justify their lies, and completely reveal their insecurities.
While you're staying silent, you also need to master sprezzatura. This is an old Renaissance concept, and it's basically the art of making incredibly calculated, strategic behavior appear completely natural and effortless. The 90% think being authentic all the time is this massive virtue. But the 10%, they know that being completely authentic is for when you're alone in your room. Out in the real world, you're a character on a stage. Let's look at the authentic trap. It basically makes you a slave to the moment's raw emotion. Say your boss yells at you. Your authentic self wants to yell back, which, gets you fired. But the strategic mask asks, which version of me actually wins this situation? Sometimes you need the lion, aggressive and dominant. Other times you need the fox, cunning and diplomatic. Showing calculated vulnerability to feed someone's ego and lower their guard isn't lying, guys. It's essential jungle camouflage.
On to Section 3, strategic use of enemies, or why friends make you weak.
If you spend your whole life trying to be liked, it simply means you stand for nothing. Consider this thought, inspired by the great Georgian poet Machiavelli. Friends lie to protect your feelings. Your enemy hunts for your weakness like a starving dog. Let them show you where your armor is cracked. Friends are great, for sure, but they tell you your bad idea is good. The 90% absolutely crumble under criticism from an enemy. But the 10%, they use their enemies as their greatest, most brutally honest auditors. If an enemy finds a weakness, thank them for it, and then fix it.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it ties perfectly into Nassim Taleb's concept of anti-fragility. The sleepwalkers are fragile. You insult them and they break under the pressure. The 10%, however, are anti-fragile. They literally use conflict as pure fuel. Just look at Michael Jordan. His Hall of Fame speech wasn't some mushy talk about love. It was a 30-year list of every single person who ever doubted him. He used his enemies to build an empire. Conflict is simply the forge where you sharpen your blade.
Now for Section 4, Time and the Power of Patience, Playing the Long Game. Modern society's greatest, most debilitating addiction actually isn't a substance at all. It's the desperate need for instant gratification. You've probably heard of the marshmallow test, right? Put a marshmallow in front of a kid, eat it now or wait 15 minutes and get 2. The kids who waited succeeded in life. Well, the sleepwalkers are failing the marshmallow test every single day. They go into debt just to buy a car to look rich today, completely sacrificing their tomorrow. The 10%, though, engage in the active, brutal war of patience. They're totally willing to build an empire in the dark for 5 to 10 years, just so they can shine for 50.
So here's a rule of thumb. Whenever you want to react emotionally, or give up, or buy something you don't even need just to impress people you don't like, time travel. Ask yourself, will this matter in 10 years? If the answer is no, drop it. Ignore it completely. Just by extending your time horizon, you immediately outpace the 90% who literally can't see past next weekend.
This brings us to Section 5, Rational Egoism and Prioritizing the Self.
It's time to ruthlessly tear down some deep societal conditioning. We're always taught that selfishness is this terrible sin. Society loves the resentful martyr, the person who gives just to look good, always says yes, gets treated like a doormat, and is secretly totally drained and used. That's actually cowardice, not kindness. You have to become a rational egoist. Set boundaries, build your strength, and give from a place of true abundance. A weak, exhausted person really can't help anyone. You have to aggressively prune the dead branches from your life and protect your time. Stop seeking fickle love and demand respect. And you know what? You only get respect by setting those boundaries.
Let's look at Section 6, Emotional Alchemy and Triumph. This is the final master key.
So the crucial point is that this is the ultimate difference between the reactive sleepwalkers of the 90% and the masters of the 10%. Emotions are just energy, and energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? Only transformed. When the sleepwalkers feel anger or grief, they leak that energy. They complain, they drink, they vent until the tank is totally empty. But the 10% practice emotional alchemy. They take that nuclear, destructive emotion, and instead of suppressing it, they transmute it. They turn it into high-octane fuel for their ambition. I'll prove them wrong is hands down one of the most powerful motivators in human history.
To do this, you have to step out of your emotions and become the observer of your own biology. Imagine you're sitting in a control room right behind your eyes. Someone insults you. Instead of reacting, you look at the screen and say, "Ah," an emotional spike of anger. Then you just flip a switch and redirect that raw energy straight to the engine sector of your ambitions. Once you master this internal process, no one can ever manipulate you again. You are entirely free.
But I've got to give you a solemn warning as we wrap up. The ultimate trap is your own ego. The moment you start looking down on the 90% with disgust instead of understanding, you lose. You fall right back into the trap of reacting to your own pride. The true player knows they're always a student because the game never, ever ends.
So, here we are. You've seen the writing on the wall, the cage door is wide open, and you are no longer a sleepwalker projecting illusions onto a chaotic world. You know how to observe, how to wear the mask, and how to transmute your pain into pure power. The only question left is, will you actually step into the dark to find the treasure? Or are you going to go back to sleep? Think about it. Thanks for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.